In today's video, we're going to talk about how much time, effort, and money you should put into preparing your home for the market. We always want to keep in mind at the end of the day that you walk away with a positive return on investment. Because of course you could always sell your house for more, but we want to make sure that at the end of the day you come out on top, both financially and in terms of your sanity. So let's get into it. There are many things that you could do to prepare your home for the market. And we're going to go through each of them, and I'm going to help you think through whether or not it makes sense specifically for you and your situation. The first big question that comes up for a lot of people is, should you remodel? And for most people, the answer is no. And when I say a remodel, I'm talking about gutting your house, adding an addition, really doing bigger projects. In most of those situations, the return on investment is not a positive one. Unless you're a professional house flipper and you have a crew and you're buying houses at really low prices, it's probably not going to make sense. And I don't want you to be disappointed and put in a lot of time and money only to have a situation where you don't walk away with a positive return on that investment. So your next question might be, well, then should I at least make some kind of updates, refresh the kitchen, refresh the bathroom? And I want to say, it is a pretty risky situation at best. You are walking a pretty fine line. And that's because the perceived value for whatever that you do is pretty subjective. You might go into your kitchen and say, well, I'm going to refresh it and put in white subway tile. That's pretty non-offensive, right? And for the most part, if you do make a move like that, you will appeal to the widest audience possible, which is an important thing to do. But still, when you list your home on a specific weekend, the buyer that comes into town that's interested in your house, they may hate white subway tile. And so then what you think was value that you added to your house, they don't perceive any value in that. And so then they're not going to be willing to offer you top dollar for the work that you put into updating your home. So I just want you to keep that in mind. You can make updates and refreshes, but you still are walking a bit of a risky line. And also, especially if you choose to hire contractors, then you're walking an even more risky line because it's just expensive to update homes. So you're probably in that situation even less likely to have a positive return on your investment. Okay, so maybe you're then thinking, well, what else can I do to prepare my home for the market? What about the deferred maintenance that I have in my house? And in this situation, I want you to think about the deferred maintenance, whether it's really obvious or it's not obvious. And I'm not talking about trying to hide things from buyers, but here's what I mean. When a buyer decides to tour your home, probably first they've looked at listing photos online, they've got excited about your house, they called their real estate agent, they book a showing, and excitement is high and they're coming through and looking at your home, and hopefully it's everything that they were expecting it to be. Now, if you have the kind of deferred maintenance that's immediately obvious, like they walk up to your front door and they see that a gutter's missing or that the paint is peeling, in those cases, their perceived value of your home immediately starts to go down. And it's kind of a wah-wah moment. And they think, well, maybe it's not worth what I thought it was worth. Now I want to go lowball the offer. I want to negotiate. And that's not a situation you want. So if your house generally has great bones, the condition and quality of it's good, but you have a few obvious pieces of deferred maintenance, if you have the time and money, I would say do it, because you really want to keep that buyer perception high when they initially write an offer. Now, the next situation is, what if you have deferred maintenance, or maybe just like expected upcoming maintenance, like the roof is older or the water heater probably only has a few years left. Now, never hide that information. When you list your home, there is a document called the seller's property disclosure. In that seller's property disclosure, please list everything. We want to be very transparent. Otherwise, things get ugly in negotiations and you end up tending to lose money because you didn't disclose. But again, let's talk about the buyer and what usually happens. Usually, even though if your real estate agent lists that information online ahead of time, which they should list that on the MLS, a lot of buyers, they just see a house and they get really excited and they get all emotional. They don't stay very logical. So they don't even bother looking at that information. A lot of times real estate agents don't even send that over before the buyer goes to tour the home. And so you have this excited buyer and then they come in, they tour your home. Yep, it's everything they thought it was from the listing photos. And then they decide to write an offer. Now they start to deal with the reality, but it's not like they're going to get really upset with you because you didn't try to hide anything. All the information is there, and they're just kind of settling into the realities of, okay, I bought the house, or I went under contract on the house. This is the value that I feel for it. Now they're emotionally invested. They put in their time and their energy, and it's probably going to work out better for you to not go ahead and replace that water heater that has just a few years left, but just make sure that your house looks great upon those initial showings. Okay, but now what if you are in the situation where your home has a lot of deferred maintenance, both obvious and not so obvious? There's simple projects, big projects. What should you do in that situation? And I would say, given your time and given your money, just call a spade a spade. It's okay. Because if you put in a lot of effort, you're probably not going to get a positive return on that investment. So just list your house at what the market will bear. What is the true market value for your house, given the condition and the work that it needs? It's okay. At the end of the day, you're going to walk away from the situation earning the most amount of money that you could on your house if you just list it at whatever that market will bear, that true market value for the condition of your home. Now, the next question that comes into mind is, what about minimizing and decluttering? You might have 6 months to work with before you list your home, or even just a couple days or a couple weeks. And I would say the first thing that you should do if you have very limited time is depersonalize as much as possible. So take down the wedding photos, take down the baby photos, paint over that mural that you had your friend do in your bedroom, because it's just not going to appeal to people. And we're trying to sell a fantasy. People are walking into your home not because they're curious about you and how you lived your life. They're looking for the next stage of their life, that next chapter. They want to walk into their home, into your home, and imagine it as their home. So don't pull them out of the fantasy by saying, hey, it's Richard and Sally that live here and they have 2 kids. We don't want to go there. We want them to imagine their life. So first and foremost, if you have very limited time, depersonalize as much as you can. The next thing I would say to do is declutter. And again, if you're limited on time, I really want you to declutter in the areas that are the most visible. So clean off the vanity in your bathroom. Take out the extra appliances. You don't need that bread maker right now or that ninja blender sitting on your countertop, especially if you have a small kitchen. We really want to declutter. And even take a hard look in areas like, say, your living room. Maybe you have your favorite recliner in there, but it's feeling a little bit crowded. Get it out. You can be uncomfortable for a couple weeks while people are touring your home and going under contract, because at the end of the day, I bet you'd like to sell your home for as much money as you can. So make yourself a little bit uncomfortable today and declutter as much as you can. First, starting with those really obvious places, but then if you have a bit more time, I recommend looking at the places that are a little bit more hidden, because people are going to come into your home just like when someone is buying a car, they kick the tires, take it for a test drive. People are going to walk around through your home. They're going to open your closets. They're going to open your cupboards. And what you really want to show is a story of that there's more than enough room for someone to live here. Because if someone looks into your closet and everything's crammed in, what they're going to think is, wow, if it doesn't work for this person, and I know I have a whole collection of designer purses and coats, well, then this really isn't going to work for me, and they're going to walk away. And I don't care about your reality in terms of, did your house actually work for you size wise? I want you to declutter. Get rid of some of those extra clothes. Just think about what's in season. Put things in boxes as much as you can. So when people walk through your home and then they open the closets and they open the cupboards, they see extra space and they feel at ease of like, you know what? I think this house is going to be okay for me. There's room to grow. I can see my life fitting into this home. That is a perspective that I really want you to hold on to. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, okay, but I don't have a storage pod or somewhere else to move. What do I do with my stuff? So in this situation, I'm going to tell you the order of forgiveness that a buyer might have. So if you have a garage or if you have a shed, box up as much as you can, and please box it. Don't just start shoving things into areas. Make it the process as neat as you can, but put those extra items in a shed or in a garage. The next most forgiving place is going to be a basement if that's what you have to work with. So then go ahead and put your extra items in a basement. You don't need it for the next few weeks. You're going to be okay. And then the next, in terms of order of operations, where they're a little less forgiving, but it's still understandable, is if you only have a spare bedroom to work with, then go ahead, box it up, and put it in the spare bedroom. Hopefully that's going to give you a little bit of leeway, but really, as much as you can, keep the buyer's perspective in mind and know that that will end up having a positive return on investment for you. Now, the next thing in terms of what else can you do to help increase buyer perception of your home, in terms of benefiting you, in terms of how much effort should you put into getting your house ready for the market, and that is going to come down to cleaning. And this is where, people, when they initially walk into your house, they're going to see the clutter first and foremost. The next thing is when they get a little bit more starting to open cupboards and look around your house, that's when they're going to notice the cleaning. And my goodness, put the toilet seats down, make your bed, get rid of the extra shoes that are by the front door. That's just a non-negotiable thing. And it all has to do with buyer perception. You want them to think that whoever lives in their home has taken impeccable care of the home. Because if your home is clean and your home is organized, well, then buyers just start to make assumptions, even if it's not true, that you've probably also gone above and beyond in terms of the maintenance of your home and taking care of your home. And if it's a fantasy, whatever, it's a fantasy. But we want to keep that fantasy high in terms of how buyers are looking at your home and thinking about how you might have taken care of your home. So clean as much as you can. Of course, clean, declutter, and clean those areas that are most obvious. But if you have the time, vacuum under the baseboards, wipe behind the toilet. All of that is really going to further increase the buyer's perception about how well your home has been taken care of. Okay, now you've done the most important things, but you still might be wondering, well, what about a few simple refreshes around the house? And if you have the time and the money, to an extent, I would say yes, it absolutely makes sense. So if you can, and this is something that would help you a lot during showings, have an extra set of fresh hand towels, ones that you just put out, but you don't actually use when you're living there. Put them out before a showing. And so I would say have fresh hand towels. If your couch is looking pretty tired, I would have a blanket artfully draped over the side so people can't see that the cat is scratching up your sofa, because maybe you can't afford to buy a new sofa, but you don't want that, again, that buyer perception. If they say, wow, they let the cat tear up the sofa, what else are they allowing to happen in their house? And you don't want buyers thinking that. So do some refreshing. Again, if you have a very personalized bedspread that's pretty loud, or maybe it is a little bit tired, you could put on a whole new duvet, but if you don't have that time or money, at least have a neutral colored blanket that's smoothed out over the bedspread. And then in terms of, if you want to take it a few steps further in terms of what you could do to refresh your house, you might be thinking something like, well, my house is in great shape, but maybe I should update the paint. And in this case, I would again say you're walking a pretty fine line in this situation. And I'm going to give you an example of where things could go wrong. So a few years ago, I was touring a house with my buyers, and it fit their needs in terms of the size and what they needed, but the paint was very dark. It was kind of like a cowboy had gone through there. There were multiple shades of brown. There was a dark maroon. There were some deep taupe kind of colors going on, and the ceilings were really high. So all we did when we walked to that house is thought, shoot, this is too dark. It needs to be painted, and it's probably going to cost a lot of money. Now, thankfully, I kept my mouth shut. I called the seller's agent to follow up with them. And the seller's agent was so excited to tell me how the seller had just finished painting their house, how it had all new fresh paint. And guess what? She was the one that told them what colors to paint. She was very pleased with herself. And unfortunately, you'd think she had some market knowledge, but it wasn't a good choice. It wasn't a good direction. And if you don't have any design background or an agent who has a strong understanding of design and what's going to appeal to the widest audience, you could end up walking to that negative territory, and whatever time and money you put into refreshing your house, it just doesn't end up paying off. So if you're still on the fence about some of the updates, whether or not it might make sense for you, if you're thinking of selling in the near future and you're in Boulder, you're welcome to reach out to me. You can go to my website and get on my calendar. I'm happy to talk with you for 30 minutes, and we can talk about what updates make sense or what don't, given the condition of your home and the potential competition. Now, the final question that you're probably asking yourself is, well, I hear all this talk about staging, and should I stage my home? Now, before, when we talked about some of those simple refreshes like new pillows or duvet or towels, that is always great. And I think that will always make a positive difference in terms of buyers' perception, so long as you stick with a pretty bright, uplifting, neutral, calm color palette, something that feels refreshing. The way I always talk to my clients is, think about a hotel. If you were going to go into a hotel, are you going to see red sheets or are you going to see white sheets? Probably white. Just try to think about what a hotel would do, and you're probably getting closer to hitting the right mark. So in terms of what you should do for your home specifically when it comes to staging, if you already have a house full of furniture, I would say use what you have. Now, hopefully you have someone who can give you some advice, someone with a design eye who can help you figure out how to stage different rooms, what to get rid of, what to use. A lot of times with my clients, I just walk through their home and I shop their home. And it ends up things are rearranged, but it starts to appeal better to a buyer and usually has more breathing space. And that is a really good way to start with what you have. Now, if you have a completely empty house, here's where I say, slow down. It really depends on the kind of home that you have. If you have a very high-end luxury home, well, then you really have a story that you're trying to sell to that high-end luxury buyer, because they're paying a lot. And so they really want it to have that story go all the way to the end of, yes, this is a high-end luxury home. In that case, it probably makes sense to fully furnish that home and make sure it's high-end furniture that's really in line with the story of the home. Now, if you have an empty home and it's not this high-end luxury home, it probably isn't going to make sense to fully furnish your home. In this case, I want you to think about vignettes. You're still trying to tell a story, and you want people to be able to imagine themselves living there. And you think, well, come on, it's a house. You can imagine yourself. And yet buyers, for the most part, are not that creative. They really struggle to visualize themselves living in a house when the house is completely empty. So in this case, think about the vignettes that make sense. I would say, make sure your kitchen has hand towels, same with the bathroom, a nice bottle of soap where someone's going to be imagine themselves using the bathroom. It looks like maybe somebody lives there. It's not hard to make that look lived in terms of the kitchen and the bathroom. Then I would say, if you have a table, also go ahead and set that table. Put in some fresh flowers so people have an easy time imagining themselves dining there every day. Then you think about, well, what about the bigger empty rooms? In this case, I would focus on two areas. One is the living room, and I'm not saying you need a whole living room full of furniture, but maybe have a nice side chair, have a nice side table, have a nice side lamp, and make sure that the lamp is on so it looks inviting. And then in the bedroom, if you can, here's where I'd say, if you're going to put a bed anywhere and put some linens, go put it in that primary bedroom. And that will really help buyers increase their perceived value of your house because they feel comfortable, they can imagine themselves living there. Lastly, we need to talk about the outside of your home. And again, we really want to keep that positive return on investment in mind. So taking on a large landscaping project, that is not going to make sense. But when it comes to having something clean, having something presentable and refreshed, maybe even staging a few vignettes, that is going to make a lot of sense. So here's what I mean. Definitely sweep off your front entryway, get the cobwebs out of your light, make sure you have a working bulb. That all really matters just in terms of the basic cleaning. Then when it comes to the front door, go ahead and put down a new welcome mat that is inviting for the buyers when they come to your home. And if it's the right time of the year, put out a fresh pot of flowers. That'll go a long ways to making your home look cheerful and inviting. Now, if it's the right time of the year and you can, I would stage some vignettes. So again, maybe you have a chair by the front door that looks inviting, or in the backyard, you set up a little bistro table. All of that is just going to go a long ways to helping buyers envision themselves being in your home and walking away with a good impression. Now, if it is the winter, especially especially in Boulder, people are very forgiving of that. You do need to have a clean front door area, put down a new mat. But beyond that, if everything's covered in snow, everything's covered in snow. That's not a big deal at the end of the day. So I hope all of this information is helpful as you're getting ready to list your home and thinking, how much energy should I put into this? This conversation hopefully should be really helping you focus on a positive return on investment. We've talked about the things that are probably not going to make any sense. And then we've talked about the things that are the most important to do to prioritize, depersonalizing, then decluttering, then cleaning. And then we've talked about the things in terms of how much should you update your home, and that's going to be a lot of based upon the competition. I hope this information is helpful. Thank you for your time. Bye.